remind you who is going to be joining us today. So we have Johanna Dickinson, who is the HR Director at KP Snacks. We also have Jason Perry, who is Head of Online Development at Co-op Group. And we have Jack Warner, who is Account Manager at Unilever and completed the new Starter Skills course during the last intake. Now, you may notice that Emily Tom from General Mills isn't up on the slide, and unfortunately, Emily can't be with us today. And she does send her apologies and our well wishes to still have a really fantastic event in her absence. So, Pecha Kucha, what does that mean? So we've asked each of our speakers to provide 5 image slides in response to 5 questions that I'll be posing to them. And we've got roughly around about 30 seconds for each slide. And I say roughly, you know, give or take. So it should be quite a nice, informative yet punchy kind of speaker session. And we'll then go into our panel discussion where we'll bring all of our speakers back together. If you've got any questions, please, you know, as our speakers are sharing their talks, please do pop that into the chat box. You can start right away if anything is coming to mind before they've shared. I guess if everybody is happy, I would love to welcome our first speaker, Johanna Dickinson, HR Director at KP Snacks, who should imminently be spotlighted along with me.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome, Johanna. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Are you doing all right?
Yes, very well, thank you. Yeah, still at home, but yeah, still functioning.
I think most of us are at home. It's been a year today since lockdown, so yeah. What better way than to all get together and focus on our learning? Absolutely,
couldn't agree more. So thank you for the opportunity. I didn't understand the Pecha Kucha method. I had to look that up as well. But let's see how this goes.
Brilliant. Let's dive right in then. So here is your first slide. So I'd really like you to tell everybody how this really describes your job.
Yeah, so this is a great photograph for me. It's taken 2 years ago when we launched KP for Me, which is an online platform for employee communication, engagement, reward and benefits. These are our values and behaviours champions, and our values and behaviours champions are volunteers from around our business, from all sites and functions, all different levels, who really championing what it means to really bring our culture to life every day. And as the HR director, that is a huge part of my role, to enable the organisation. So, you know, people are our biggest and most expensive asset that we have at KP Snacks. So, you know, my role is to ensure that we have people with the right skills, doing the right work at the right time, and doing it to the best of their ability, and that feel motivated and want to really make tomorrow better than today. So, you know, it sounds from a holistic level that might sound, well, that covers an awful lot. It absolutely does. It covers everything from hiring through to retirement and everything in between. So whether that's learning and development, whether it's talent management, whether it's employee relations issues, it's also things like getting people paid on time. So making sure people get the salary that they expect to receive and make sure they're paid correctly. So it's everything from the strategic change at the top part of our model to being the administrative expert and the employee champion at the bottom part.
That's brilliant. There's quite a breadth there, as you say, that you cover. Really interesting. I think the KP for Me sounds like a really great platform that you guys have launched. So I'm going to bring up your second slide, Johanna, and I'd really like you to share what are the main skills required to perform your job, and how does this really showcase that?
So I think this one is probably the most important skill to have as an HR director, which is listening. Not just to our colleagues, of course, they tell you so much. We get a lot of feedback from colleagues, whether it's online or whether it's through focus groups, through surveys, through conversations. They tell us really how it is to work at KP. So they are the ones that give us the real inside track on the employee experience. And then we use that feedback to really improve things going forward. So listening is a massive part, but not only to employees, it's also to my stakeholders. So I'm part of an executive team one, reporting to the CEO, and we are leading the business. So we have to work together and challenge each other and make sure that we are putting in the right plans for the business going forward. So I think, listening is a really important part. As an HR director as well, you do need some core skills in how to do a lot of the people processes. I would say a lot of what I've learned in HR has come from a basis of learning to be a line manager. And I actually was a line manager first in operations before I moved into HR. And actually 90% of what I do as in HR, I've learned being a manager of teams. So I think that's really, really important. There are clearly some skills that you will learn as you go. You have to be fairly numerate because you're dealing with money and pay. So often people forget that part of HR. And also you need to have very good communication skills. So communications is a really important part of HR as well. So doing a CIPD qualification definitely helped me later in my career. I didn't have an HR qualification to come into HR. It's definitely something you can learn on the job, but it definitely helped put a lot of those skills into practice. But I would just emphasize it's not just what you do, it's very, very important just as much the behavior and how you do it. So I'd focus as much on how as I would on the what.
I think that's really interesting, actually. And I quite like what you were talking about in terms of that line manager role and the transferable skills, and really picking out, communication and the behavior and how you show up. So it's not just what you do, but it's how you do it. And again, I think that's a point that I might come back to in our panel discussion in a little bit as well. So thank you for that one, Johanna. So we're moving on to your third picture, which I'm very interested to hear about because I love a good Post-it note. So could you describe for us what the biggest challenge about your job is?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it really sums it up in that we have always got more work than we have resource. And it's always that way, and it should be that way. So a lot of the challenge is around prioritization, deciding what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to ensure you've got the right skills and resources to actually deliver it, and deliver it on time, in full, on budget. This picture was taken at Wentbridge Hotel in Pontefract. It's one of many planning days that we've done in HR. And this is part of my team that are getting involved in the process, because I believe that having the wider team involved, whilst it might take longer, means that we get lots of different viewpoints around what's important to them and their parts of the business, whether it's in a factory or whether it's in a function. And we utilize all of that and build the plan as a collective team, so that when we put the ownership around the plan, we've got everyone's buy-in to it and everyone takes their ownership for it going forward. So I think, that's really important. It starts off a bit like this wall with lots and lots of data and data points on the wall. And then we take the key ones out and we start to work those through into workable plans. But it does take some time, and we improve the process every year. But it's always a bit of a challenge.
Absolutely. I love a good cluster process with Post-it notes. And I think what you're talking about in terms of getting those different perspectives, making sure everybody feels like their voice has been heard, and also that they're bought into where you're taking these plans is really important. So great to see that you've got lots, obviously, of viewpoints covered there on that wall. So we're going to move on to your fourth picture. So has there been something in your career that you've had to overcome?
Yes, I would say it started quite early on, because I left school after my GCSEs. I wanted to be a figure skater, and that was my passion. So I didn't go to college or university, and I went straight into work life. I worked at my local Pizza Hut restaurant as a crew member, just to really pay the way for the skating. And the hours worked really well, because I could skate in the morning, go to work around 12 and finish around 6 or 9, depending on the shift. I didn't expect to enjoy work as much as I did, but I absolutely loved it. I loved the customer service at the front of the restaurant, but also loved the complexity of the kitchens in the back. So I actually got really into working. So skating kind of, whilst it was a passion, I had to make a really difficult decision as to whether I was going to continue with it in the same kind of full-time nature, or whether I would kind of knock it on the head, leave it as a bit of a dream, and then focus on work. And I did. And it was hard because my peer group at the time had all done their A-levels and were off to university. And I was running shifts at restaurants for 7 years. And I think what that helped me overcome is really, I just needed to really prove a point. I felt very driven to show that actually you can succeed without necessarily going on a typical career path. And I think part of that and the competitive element that I have to win with the skating has definitely fueled me to reach the position that I am in today. So no regrets, but at the time it felt very, very hard indeed.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sounds like quite a big decision that you had to make, but that's something I've written down here is surprise passions. You know, it sounds like you got to experience something that you didn't know was something that you were going to really enjoy, and you gave yourself time to explore that. So that's really interesting. And we are coming to our final slide for you, Johanna, and this is what one piece of advice would you give to somebody starting out their career journey within the food and consumer goods industry?
Yeah, and these are the pyramids at Giza. If you haven't been, I definitely think it's worth a visit. You actually can go right inside these pyramids. But that less of my kind of travel blog. This is more about careers, and this is really an analogy for me around careers. I think for me, getting the breadth that you can get early on really pays off when you reach more senior roles in the future. I think it's quite often you feel quite driven to go up vertically in the organization and strive for that next big job with more money, more perks. But actually, if you go more of a straight up flagpole career path, it can be quite unstable at the top. So my recommendation, and I feel I really try and champion this as much as I can, is get breadth of experience, either in different functions, on different projects, to enable you to experience more richness in different types of work, so that you understand the connection points between aspects within an organization, but also you learn different skills, you have different experiences that you can utilize, and also you work with different people, more importantly, and that makes it a richer experience, a more fulfilling experience, but also one that you will benefit from greatly when you get to a more senior position. So whilst I really didn't enjoy my 2 years in compensation and benefits because I'm not particularly strong in maths, I forced myself to do it and actually learned to love spreadsheets for the pure processing ability that they have. Once you understand it, the problem, you can actually, really come out of that experience going, yeah, that was really valuable. And I would definitely have really fallen back on that as an HR director now that I did that experience, and I kind of made myself a stronger person as a result.
Yeah, brilliant. I think I'm definitely going to come back to that point when we have our panel discussion, because I think getting that breadth of experience is a really great piece of advice. But I guess one of the things that we could maybe dig into there is a bit about how, because obviously sometimes opportunities present themselves to you, and you don't have to put yourself forward for them. But I think there might be something that we can talk around there about how you might be able to seek out those opportunities as well. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for being first up on the bat, Johanna, and for doing such a great job, and for sharing your experience and advice. And I will gladly welcome you back to our panel in a little bit of time. Fabulous. So next up, I would love to welcome our second guest speaker, Jason Perry, who is Head of Online Development for Co-op Group.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Vicky.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really good.
Brilliant. You revved up and excited after hearing Johanna for you to share your wares?
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous because obviously very tough act to follow there. So yeah, hopefully you guys will find some good value in what I've got to share.
You forget I've heard you speak before, so I know that you've got the goods. I know this is going to be great. Brilliant. Well, let's crack into your talk and your pictures. So for your first slide, if you could please describe, help share how this describes your job.
Perfect. Yeah. So I guess so I work within e-commerce, and I think it's safe to say what a year it's been. So my job in a nutshell, I'm responsible for the Co-op's online strategy and rollout, our in-store kind of picking processes, technology, the equipment we use, as well as all of our last mile technology and kind of customer service touch points that we've got. So I think for me, my job's really about creating a customer focused online offering that's fit for the Co-op and helps us to be the #1 kind of convenience retailer in the UK. So I think the picture helps demonstrate the kind of flexibility that we've been trying to approach however customers want to shop with us in whatever way they want to do so. I mean, when I first joined, this was one of the first bits I pitched to the board around what online for the Co-op could look like and how flexible it is.
Gosh, what it could look like. That's a bit of a piece to pull together. That's quite interesting. I might delve into that a little bit later on to understand how you approach that. That'd be really useful to know. Okay, we're going to move on to your second slide. So what are the main skills required to perform your job? And I really can't wait to see what the connection between that question and a bunch of sponges is.
Yeah, I think obviously when I saw it, I thought, right, how can I encapsulate? And I think Joanna spoke perfectly about kind of listening. I think for me, kind of being a sponge was down a similar theme. So you've got to be able to take in so many different sources of information, whether that's you've got it under the hot tap, the cold tap, you're dunking it in some water, whatever it might be, you're kind of constantly being bombarded in a lot of our jobs around kind of data, information, insight, colleagues are saying, what customers are saying, you've got numbers coming at you. So I think for me, the main skill is being able to take all that in, digest it, and then make sense of it and go, right, what bits do I need to keep on to make that sponge useful for me? So actually you retain in the liquid kind of cleaning stuff. I don't want to name any brands on here because there's plenty of people are probably upset, but yeah, it's kind of taking on all that information and then making the best decision how you get the most from your sponge. And obviously you can add more sponges, you can take sponges away.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because obviously, you know, the world we live in, probably we've had so much more information now than we've ever had, and as you say, it comes in different shapes and sizes and guises. So it'd be really interesting to understand how you distill that information and how you get that insight out of it as well. It'd be quite good to understand. Okie dokie, we're raring through. We're on slide 3, and this is quite a scary picture. So love to know what the biggest challenge is about your job.
Yeah, so I think kind of heading up the business unit in the Co-op, there's a lot of complicated different units across the business that either don't work together or need to work together. So for me, this kind of encapsulated like what you see behind the scenes. So in kind of telephone exchanges, a lot of people will just see the shiny stuff on the outside or being able to connect to something instantly. For me, the biggest challenge is getting people together to be connected, to understand where each are coming from. I think what this picture tries to show as well is, look, there's potentially a right sequence to do things as well. So if you're rewiring something, you're going to have to do it in the right way. Otherwise, you're not going to get your outcome that you want. You need to understand what's compatible. Obviously, not everything works with everything. So you've got to be kind of really considered and planned about what you do. But obviously navigating through something like that, I think when I took this picture from it, I thought it looked like our online systems in the back end and how they all look to get online groceries to customers. So I think it kind of had a double edge for me. But yeah, it's sometimes what you see at the front is not as easy as what goes on in the background. So it's kind of landing a load of different things at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's trying to make it easy for the customer, but sometimes it means it's not that easy when you're putting the pieces together behind the scenes. So I'm going to move on from this picture because it is slightly terrifying me when I like things nice and neat in front of me. So we're going to move on to your slide 4. So has there been something in your career that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really blessed. I've had a great career to date so far, so really kind of great. And I think for me, there's been points where I've kind of been at rock bottom with work. So kind of to the point of feeling completely useless at my job, almost to the point of tears in the office. I'm not ashamed to say. I think what I'd kind of found in there is sometimes you're not always compatible with everybody you work in. And I think for me, trying to overcome that was all around kind of taking positives from wherever you can to kind of dust yourself back off, kind of build up your confidence to say, look, actually, I have got the skills, I've got what it takes, and kind of navigating yourself through some kind of tricky situations where you probably don't think there's a way out. And I think kind of this is where it kind of comes back to really playing on your strengths and knowing what they are, to help kind of drive you. And then I think once you kind of got a foundation again where you can be confident, I think it kind of plays into the theme that I'll touch on in a moment around kind of taking a chance. But I think once you kind of got to get there to know where your resilience levels are, what you can kind of do to overcome. And I said that was inside work, looking for bits to be confident about, but then also kind of assessing that whole life as a piece and going, right, actually, how does work fit around kind of personal, and kind of really going into kind of what you enjoy doing, what you like to kind of get you through some of those dark moments. So apologies, that sounds a little bit dark and stuff, and often we kind of spoke about really good stuff, but I think it'd only be honest for me to kind of touch on periods like that, because I think you come out of it better, stronger, more aware, and you kind of learn lots from those situations.
Absolutely, I can completely empathise, because I have a similar experience that's kind of pinging up in the back of my head about the imposter syndrome, and just coming to work and not having that drive, because all of these things are kind of coming at you, and like you say, it's about taking yourself out of that mindset and really assessing what am I good at, what am I getting from this job, where do I want to go, how does this fit in with the kind of home and the rest of your kind of balancing balls of life, and trying to see a positive way forward. So definitely, I think that's a great story to share. Thank you. So finally, if you can believe we're here already, what is the one piece of advice you would give to somebody starting out their career in the food and consumer goods industry?
Yeah, so I think the board game theme continues from Joanna's previous slide. So I think for me, it's all around kind of being open to change and take chances. So whether that's stuff that you weren't expecting to come along, I think it kind of plays into kind of some of the previous points made around kind of getting a more rounded experience. I think you'll pay the kind of benefits much later on down the line, and I can talk to examples where I've kind of seen stuff come along I wasn't quite expecting, but to take it's kind of left me on a really good path. And I think what I'd want to say on this as well is, I don't think you need to think about the route of getting to somewhere in particular. I think you've got to understand why do you want to get there, and there's multiple ways of getting to achieve your goals. And I say some of the best things that can kind of happen to you are when you take that chance, you embrace the change, and you really kind of make the most of anything that kind of comes up and throws at you, and you adapt. And I say being open to those situations is brilliant.
Exactly. We've been in a year of heavy and constant change, so trying to lean into it rather than be perhaps a bit afraid of it, and understand what you can do and what's in your control, and as you say, sort of going forward that way is a really useful piece of advice. So thank you for sharing. Well, thank you to our second speaker, Jason. It's been a pleasure to hear from you as well, and obviously we'll bring you back with Johanna at the end after we've heard from our third speaker in a second for that panel discussion. And again, just a reminder, if you've got any questions that have popped up into your head, please do pop them into the chat box, and I'll come to those at the end of the panel discussion that will follow. So next up, so last but by no means least, we have Jack Warner from Unilever, who is an account manager and who also completed the new starter skills course in our last intake. So lovely to welcome you to the stage, Jack.
Thanks so much.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. It's going to be a difficult act to follow. I've got to admit, Vicky, some of these talks have been fantastic. I thought Joanna's reflected on some really good moments, and also Jason. I think your point talking about not only the highs of business, but also some of the lows of business as well. I think it's a really honest and I think very good thing to do, particularly to new starters in the industry who will face lots of different challenges throughout their lives. So I think that's a really tough act to follow.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that you all have great things to say about each other. I like that in a speaker panel, and I am positive you're going to have some really great things to share as well. And obviously, having done the course quite recently, I think when we come to your kind of final questions, they'll be slightly different to what I've asked Johanna and Jason, because it will pull from your experience of what you've gained through the learning that everybody dialed in today is going through as well. So I'm going to dive right in, Jack, and we're going to go to your first picture. So can you just share how this describes your job for me?
I can. So my role is a senior account manager at Unilever, and essentially what that involves is the management of sales and relationships with grocery retailers across the UK. And what it basically involves is commercial planning and opportunities, the selling in of new products within our different retailers. It's about understanding the customer KPIs, so really understanding what your customer, what the retailer in the UK or elsewhere internationally really wants to be driving in their business. And therefore, as a result, building plans that can enable us as a supplier, alongside other suppliers, to then be able to tailor their plans and build strong effects together to be able to generate a good year of sales potential. And then secondly, it's about negotiating plans and contracts. So particularly in sales, it's all about numbers, it's about negotiations, it's about contracts, it's about trade terms, and it's essentially about bringing all of them things together to be able to get a really good, effective commercial sales plan between both parties that can benefit you both. And then the fourth area is in regards to linking up internally. So the role involves marketing, finance, operations, supply chain, to essentially work all together to be able to set and implement strategies with the customer. So it's a very kind of multifaceted role. And then finally, it's about managing the reporting and performance reviews versus the plan, whether that's internally, understanding where our sales position versus where we expected it to be, or it may be externally, where the customer sales position is where it expected to be. So it's basically about bringing everything together, whether that's numbers, presentations, different meetings you may have, on all the different functions to be essentially the middleman, the middlewoman, and the point of contact between a customer and a supplier.
There's a lot in there, Jack. It's quite sounds like quite a busy role, and I can imagine the kind of negotiation, but also trying to work with your customer and build a cohesive plan could be potentially quite a tricky space as well. So that'd be quite interesting to hear a bit more about that in a moment. Well, thank you for kicking that first question off. We're going to go into your second slide now. So what are the main skills required to do your job?
So the main skills required, I would put down to 4 main skills. So I think the first one is analytical. And what I mean by analytical, it's all the numbers behind everything. So that's spotting trends, it's looking at different opportunities involved, and it's really being able to convey all that data, whether that's internally within your business or externally to other businesses, and how that trends out and how that maps out to give you overall information and overall new content and strategies that you can go after. So analytics is a big part of the role. I think secondly, it's about negotiation skills, and everybody thinks negotiations are one person wins all, but in reality, a negotiation is a compromise, and it's about reaching a solution that benefits both parties. And negotiations may be present in conversations externally, it may be present in conversations with your line manager, people who work for you. Negotiation is really a part of most conversations that you have, you just don't really know it. So I think that it's a very key skill to be able to have. I think point 3 is about planning and strategy. So this is really looking at long-term future trends, long-term future goals. And it's really taken away from the next week or the next month or the next 3 months, and more moving your thought process into the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years, so that essentially you and your business can then make the plans work for both the customer and the supplier to be able to generate mutual business. And then fourth, I would say the main skill, which I think probably is the reason why this slide is quite busy, is it's organizational. And it's something that Johanna mentioned before, which is all about communication and making sure that if you can communicate very well between your colleagues or customers, it can solve a lot of problems. So it's about really keeping on top of things. It's about the ability to prioritize. It's about the ability to delegate, and then manage your diaries and emails accordingly so that you can make the most out of yourself.
Yeah, I think organisational skills is something that I would say is really key to the kind of just the way that we work, and that kind of underpinning sort of to what Johanna was saying before about how you do things as well. So I think that's quite a strong sort of base foundation, and also that communication side of things is really important. And I quite liked how you frame negotiation as a bit of a compromise, and it's not, you know, one party takes all. And again, and maybe it's just the label that we put around it makes it sound potentially a bit scary. Okay, we're going to move on to your third image. So what is the biggest challenge about your job?
I would say the single biggest challenge is all about prioritization. You have short-term goals, you have long-term goals, you have client goals, you have internal goals, and then probably most importantly as well, you have personal goals. And it's something that I know Jason mentioned earlier about it has to fit in within your life. So you could very easily work all hours in the day on a certain area, but then you would have to deprioritize something else. You may work all hours, but then you may be deprioritizing your own personal health and your own personal well-being as well. So really priorities is not only in work, but it's also out of work. And diaries are conflicting, email inboxes are often too big, and you can't simply say yes to everything. So I would say that my personal biggest challenge is multiple stakeholders, managing the message across different businesses, and making sure that really everybody is aligned is a big skill in itself. So for me, it's all about focusing on all the high value, important stuff that often conflicts with the non-urgent, non-important stuff because it's coming into your inbox at the time. But it's about really focusing on the things that really make a difference, that are really going to make tomorrow better. And as a result, taking that time to really be able to prioritize so that you can honestly say, this is driving the most value for me at the moment, and I can stand over this decision. So for me, it's priorities, and it's something that I think between us all, and including all the people on the call, we can continuously aim to improve on every day.
Yeah, I can certainly empathise with the multiple priorities, short-term, long-term, personal goals, a lot of it, and yeah, how you prioritise your priorities, I guess, is would be an interesting one to come back to. Right, we are going to cover two final questions for you, Jack, and again, these are going to be slightly different to what I've asked Johanna and Jason. So having been through the New Starter Skills programme last year, what are the three things that you took away from the course?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the first most important thing is the role of channels. So I believe historically, big suppliers, small suppliers, medium-sized suppliers may have focused solely on the big box retailers, and they thought it was a bit of a one-size-fits-all approach when you look at prior history that's occurred. But actually, now looking into this course and understanding more about it, it's about increasing focus on all areas of the market, and whether that is more focus on online, whether that's more focus on the areas like D2C, direct to consumer, whether that's looking more into the convenience area as well, or wholesale. There's lots of different roles of channels and the expected growth of each. And what I would probably say is that from doing this course, it's enabled me to then share the importance of each of these natures of growing channels within my business and within other people as well, but also to make sure that you're putting focus on this natural growth area as well. Because if a certain area of the market is growing by default, then it completely makes sense for you to be able to put your focus into that area as well, because it's natural organic growth. So I think that'll be the first learning of my course, is really understanding the role of channels. I think the second thing will be about your future and your future self. And again, we'll come on to this later on in the talk, but it's about upskilling yourself and making sure that you're not standing still. Because if you're standing still and other people are growing and learning more, then in a way you're going backwards. But it's not being particularly hard on yourself, but it's about really understanding, where do I think the skills are going to be required in the future, and how can I upskill myself to be able to get there, so that I can then be in a place where I'm ready to take on that new role or ready to take on that new challenge. So for me, I think the future piece is about reflection, it's about planning, and it's about making sure that we all upskill ourselves so that we can be the best that we can be in the future. And then finally, the little person with the cogs going around in their mind, it's about the mind of the shopper. And to me, this is an overlooked thing, particularly in the FMCG industry. There's a lot of focus on commercial piece, there's a lot of focus on new products and innovations, But what I think is lost sometimes within this industry is that the mind of the shopper and the customer and the consumer are very different. So I think the course taught me about different missions that the customers do. It's about online being very, very different to in-store. It's about, I think, the impact of COVID-19 that has had on the industry has been massive, and big shops versus small shops are now in completely different situations than they have been over the last year. So I think that it's really understanding what trends have occurred over the last year, but then also what do we think the lasting impact of this will be? Because it's highly likely that different consumer behaviours that have come out over the last year will stick in some areas. And I think even this morning I was reading on the BBC News about how many more people are going to be walking more, how many more people are going to be listening to more podcasts, how many more people are going to be taking more personal time out of their day. So it's about understanding how our shoppers work and therefore translating that into what does the future hold, or what could the future hold.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jack. I think we are running into time a little bit, so I'm just going to move forward into your final question for you. So as somebody obviously relatively new to the industry, what advice would you give to somebody starting out their career?
Yeah, so all these people here who are all talking is about networking, and I think networking is really key because it's got 4 key benefits on my front. And the first benefit is all about accessing new information. So it's a bit like having a phone call with somebody, and if you spoke for 59 minutes out of the hour, you wouldn't learn any new information. All they would learn is things that you've got to tell them. So if anything, off the back of that call, what benefit has it particularly had? So it's all about really understanding new information from new people, because then in theory, we can all grow and learn new things. I think the second thing is about career advice. So particularly within your business, whether people have been in different roles longer or different functions longer, it's then about understanding that they've been there and done that. So really taking their advice and their learning on means that you can approach situations in different ways. The third area is about strengthening connections. So whether you're looking for a new role, you get to meet new people, you get to meet new friends, and you get to have new learning experiences. So really it's about getting out there as well and strengthening different connections, because you never know that within a year they could be in your direct team, or as a result of you speaking to them, you could be in their team. So it's about really making sure that you kind of embrace every different opportunity to be able to speak to new people. And then finally, for me, it's about finding a job that you love, because you don't often find the job that you love purely through looking on different job posting vacancies or on LinkedIn, etc. It's about speaking to people, finding out exactly what they do, and then as a result of finding out exactly what they do, and if you like it, you can then choose to go into that area because you've heard firsthand someone's experience. So it's a very much like Amazon reviews, and someone looks at a product and thinks, actually, that's a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to buy it. If I speak to Jason about the co-op and I really understand from him that that's an area that I want to work in, or it's a role that I want to work in, you've got first-hand experience that you can really translate into that. So I would say overall networking has so many benefits. It sounds quite tricky to be able to jump into at the very beginning, but it's really worth doing.
Yeah, I quite like that, Jack. So, you know, not thinking about networking as quite a formal, scary, God, I've now got to, you know, get into my networking persona, for example. And actually, it's just about having conversations with people and, you know, building perspectives and kind of sharing views and advice and yeah, just having sort of more conversation. So thank you so much. That's been a fantastic talk, and thank you to Johanna and Jason and Jack for sharing your talks. We're now going to go into a panel discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you just a second. And hopefully we will all be spotlighted so that you can see us at the same time, which Robin is doing. And again, as I said, if you've got any questions, please do pop them in the chat pane, and then I'll ask them towards the end of the panel discussion. So welcome back. I think you might still be on mute. So Jack, Jason and Johanna, if you want to unmute yourself as well, that'd be very helpful. Right, there was a lot covered through those 3 talks, and they were really, really fantastic. I think one of the things I would like to dive into is this kind of lifelong and continuous learning journey, and getting that breadth of learning and taking those opportunities and kind of everything in that chunk. So I think I might, Johanna, just because you were first and we haven't heard you for a little while, might come to you and just sort of point your way. Sort of, why do you think there's an importance around that learning mindset? Over to you.
Yeah, it's definitely a mindset rather than a skill set. It's being open to the fact that you're always learning. I mean, let's say every day is a school day, and I think that's so true. So, and you don't really know necessarily where your learning is going to come from that day. It might just be something that you've read. It might be something you observe. It might be something you hear. So I think it's just being open and recognizing that stimulation is there, and to take it in, like the sponge that Jason mentioned. There's definitely more formal parts that you can do. So I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development. As part of that, you will have literature, you have networking events, you have learning opportunities. So there will be potentially some aspects like that you can dial into. And obviously the IGD we're going to cover in terms of the plethora of learning that's available through the IGD. And I have the benefit of being part of the IGD HR Leadership Forum, which is a really great group of other HR directors from the FMCG businesses, retailers and suppliers, and we share a lot about what we're experiencing to learn from each other. So whilst we might not always, sometimes we are in competition with each other from our brand's point of view, when it comes to people and how to really be an attractive industry for people to have really great careers in, then we're absolutely working on the same team.
Absolutely. And I quite like what Jack was saying, if you're not growing, you're standing still. And I think it's, if you're not doing anything to, seek out new opinions and learn either from others around you in the workspace or more formally, as Johanna's just shared, other people are doing that. So, it's almost a bit of fear of missing out as well. So, if you don't have a continuous growth mindset, it could hold you back, I think. Brilliant. I'm going to move on to a different question. So again, around about that networking piece, I might throw this one at Jason. How would you give advice around building some authentic relationships? So again, networking might sound quite scary. So how have you built some really good connections over your career?
Yeah, I think, again, it's all around kind of being open for me, Vicky. I think it's being open to what somebody else is willing to share, not kind of going in with a set agenda either. I think both Jack and Johanna had talked about kind of listening and kind of getting the value back from kind of balance, not just talking at someone for your own agenda, but as you said, being really, really kind of open. I think I've been lucky enough to go to events, speak at kind of bits like this, and I think if you are genuinely interested in finding out there, I think people will kind of open up to you. I think there's all sorts of things you can do that's kind of around asking open questions, and kind of teasing out and kind of getting the other person comfortable enough to share, and vice versa, kind of rewarding that with you kind of sharing. And I think once you kind of establish that mutual kind of trust to be able to share, that's when you get the most out of it. I think, as you say, you've just got to be very genuine, not to just do it as a box ticking, I've spoke to 20 people today. I think you're going to get more value out of being in the right conversation with fewer people, which will hold like kind of deeper relationships later on down the line.
Yeah, I quite like your point about the open questions as well. And if you're going into an event, or if you're thinking about, trying to have some more meaningful conversations, maybe there are some questions that you might just want to jot down in the back of your notebook and try them out next time you're in the coffee area. How's your day going? Oh, what are you working on at the moment? It's just those exploratory questions which allow somebody to share a bit more, and then you can kind of delve in from there. Brilliant, thank you. So Jack, as somebody who's obviously slightly newer to the industry and completed the course recently, how would you say, how have you gone about developing your personal brand and create your own impact within the workspace?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think from my view, it's about always being yourself. So being true to what you believe in, being true to your own purpose. You're not going to benefit anybody, including yourself, if you're not true to yourself, because it's going to be bloody difficult to be able to keep up that appearance over the rest of your career if it's very different to what actually you truly believe in. So I think that it's about who you are, it's about what you stand for, and it's about really what you want to be known for. So if, for example, you were an analytics expert and that was your real passion, then, for example, starting up an analytics project and sharing a newsletter on analytics means that actually then people start to get to know that that is what your personal brand is. It's about being a lead in analytics, and therefore people will start coming to you in that area. And I think it's also about trying to get out of your comfort zone to be aligned with things that that you wish to be known for. So, for example, if you want to be known for having good relationships, whether that's with clients or with internal people as well, it's about communicating when things go really well and discussing them things and the benefits to others, and therefore maybe sharing some of that learnings and experience onto other people, so that one, you can be known for how you maybe act with customers or clients, etc. But also two, you can share that learning so other people can benefit from it. And I think as well, if there's another area such as developing younger talent, I know Joanna mentioned it then about the different boards that she sits on, which essentially aims to develop young talent within the industry and share best practice. And it's about really stepping outside of your comfort zone, even in an event like today, and being able to talk to a group of people that are newer or maybe potentially newer to the industry. And therefore, if you're able to share your learnings and how you can approach different situations, it means that what they can do is take that learning away, and also then potentially going forward, you become a bit known in a way as your personal brand as developing new talent, and therefore it starts to stick. So I would say it's just about being true to yourself and making sure that everything you do is aligned with your own purpose, and doing things that you enjoy. Otherwise, it can be a long, hard day if you're not enjoying it.
Yeah, there's kind of two things that I'm going to pull out from that, Jack. So one is about that personal impact piece, and like you said, what do you want to be known for? I think, you know, if you think of a role model, whether it's in industry or it's a celebrity or whoever it is, or somebody that you do work with, you think, what do they emulate that I can try and work towards it, not trying to be somebody that you're not, but actually if that's what I want to be known for, how can I come to work stronger in that area, and kind of give it some thought. And then also, you've got everybody dialed in has got their own views and perspectives, and again, you've got fresh ideas and thinking on the industry and challenges. So again, you've got lots of value that you can add in there. And I just want to kind of segue into that imposter syndrome piece, because we've all experienced it. No matter what stage of your career you're in, it's always crept up at one point or another. So I guess I might open this out to all of the speakers, just if there's anybody that wants to jump in and share if they've got any advice on how to kind of navigate through that.
Yeah, I can start. So I was appointed into the HR director job, having not been an HR director before. It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And I absolutely felt what you described about someone's going to realise that I don't have maybe the experience. But actually, I think there's quite a few moves in my career where I felt that, and actually there seemed to be a bit of a pattern here. And I think when you go for a new role, you're never going to know the whole thing. There is definitely a female trend of going for roles when you feel more confident that you can tick all of the skills off and the experiences off. So I think possibly females may feel this more. Not to say that men don't, but I definitely I've read lots about that. And I think what that gets you through it is there's a bit of self-talk, definitely, around reminding yourself you've been given this role for good reason. And I've been offered this role, I can do it. It's a bit of self-talk. But then I think it's around surrounding yourself with people who bring the best out of you, that know you really well, that you can talk to and say how you're feeling. Because I think what was brilliant listening to Jason today is just how open he was about some of those more uncomfortable moments that he was feeling. And actually, I just huge credit to him, because we need more men in particular to be able to feel comfortable expressing themselves. And actually, in a world where mental health is such has such an impact on the workforce in terms of missed days, because people don't feel they can come to work, I think it's a real credit to him. But I think, yeah, absolutely. It's friends, it's family, it's ex-colleagues, it's colleagues, it's people you trust, that help you feel good. But again, don't forget the self-talk as well.
I quite like that. So it's, you know, bit of a pep talk, an internal pep talk. You know, I got given the role. I pass with flying colours. I'm here. I'm valued, and I've just got to do the job. And actually, you know, anytime we start, we're always learning. So there's always that curve. And I think sometimes that's where the imposter syndrome kicks in, is when we're in that learning space, which is, it's just to let you know that that's a natural thing. So yeah, give yourself an internal pep talk. And again, that's surrounding yourself with people who bring out the best in you, but also those that you can learn from, I think. So if you're working on something new in a new area, or you want to know more, again, your networking, your connections, and those conversations, you can seek out people that can help build your knowledge and perhaps mentor you and guide you to help steer you perhaps in the right direction. I think we might have time for one more question. I'm going to throw a bit of a cheeky one in, I think. So obviously, none of us have got a crystal ball, and predicting the future is probably a very strange thing to try and do at the moment. But I know a couple of you picked on that kind of planning for the future, looking at strategy, looking at data to go, okay, where are we now? But also, where do we think we're going to be? Nobody knows for certain. So I think it would just be interesting to hear your thoughts on where you think the landscape's going to go over the next couple of years for the industry. Again,
yeah, I think very apt. I mean, I was in the office this morning looking at that very thing, looking at our kind of 4 or 5 year financial plan in the online space, and I think it's just so unknown. So I think what you can all do is kind of take what information exists now, look at kind of expected trends, and you know what, I think you can just then plan multiple scenarios. So I think what's really important is you've always got the plan, but whether you kind of create a couple of parallel versions of that says, well, what happens if this comes along? I think kind of planning for change, I think, is the best plan that you can have. Now, not knowing what that change is going to be, I think, is the toughest bit. But if you kind of build something that enables you to pivot, so whether that's in your personal skills, you build kind of key bits that then enable you to use them later on if something else comes at you, I think is really important. And the same for anybody kind of going through their business journeys and plans. If anybody does know what's going to come and happen, I will very happily spend a lot of time with you and bring you in as a consultant, because yeah, it's so
we
unknown.
can place some money on some bets if they've got the goods. I quite liked your point around, scenario planning. So, it's not one version of this might happen. Actually, here's the low, medium, high risk, or here's the kind of soft growth, medium growth, or, it's kind of painting a few layers and saying, well, if this happens, here's a hypothesis of where that might go. So it's always just trying to give a best informed insight, data driven kind of picture of where things can go. And I quite like your word pivot as well. So I think one of the things that we've seen at IGD, because obviously our learning offer, we used to do face-to-face and online, and it's and we do school volunteering work. So you can imagine that there's a lot that's kind of come at us from those two angles in terms of the school space and the learning space. And I think if you're clear on where you want to get to and what your vision is and your purpose and your forward goal, the how you get there can move and be a bit fluid. And I think sometimes if you're too strict in how you set things up and you don't allow for that flex, again, that you were talking about, Jason, in terms of that for the shoppers online, you can kind of get yourself caught up there. So definitely scenario planning and pivot, which I'm sure must be a skating phrase as well, Johanna. I'm just imagining you doing something on the ice there.
Yeah, definitely is. I think I would just to build on that. I think the other thing, I think there is general concern around this pace of technology and how technology will advance itself. You know, you hear a lot around, you know, AI and are robots going to take away, you know, jobs? And yeah, do you know what? There are going to be things that robots can do better than humans. And absolutely, we should definitely be supporting and championing that. But just remember, there are a lot of jobs that robots will never, ever be able to do. And that's ones that require people. Robots, you know, they can't show empathy or humility or trust or understand feelings. So, you know, when it's customer facing, when it's consumer facing, when it's employee development and employee engagement, those are going to be areas where we're going to need more people and more talent than ever before. So just thought I'd build on that in the comment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. Because obviously, yeah, technology is kind of taking over the world, I think, at the moment. But yeah, I quite like what you're saying in terms of, you know, knowing what we bring, the human element to things. And, you know, obviously digital is a key area. So again, if you can understand that technology and work with the automation, then that's another good route. There was something else that popped in my head, but for some reason it has popped straight back out again. So unfortunately, I can't finish that through. I'm just going to double check the chat box. I've had stuff being fed through to me, so hopefully we've covered most of it. But if anybody's got any final questions, please do pop them in the chat box now, and you might be the lucky winner, and I can ask your question to the panel. So just going to give this one moment and see if there's anything that comes through. We've got lots of people on the call, so I'm sure there must be something that you're dying to ask. And you can either send it as a direct message. Yep, perfect. I've got one through. Lovely. So again, going back to this networking, building relationships, building connections. Have any of you struggled networking at home as opposed to being when we were back in the office? And if you have struggled, what are some of the things that you've put in place to kind of overcome it and make sure it's still happening? Great question, by the way. Thank you. Jack, can I put that one to you first?
Of course, I was just going to say I can take this one. I think it would be lying to say that anybody has found networking easy throughout the last year. I think essentially everybody has been cooped up in their little rooms and their flats and their houses, spending a lot of time physically by themselves, but virtually over different video calls as we are today. So I would say the natural networking piece of going out for a team coffee or having a few drinks after work in the pub, etc., has completely gone over the last year and will take a few months potentially to be able to come back. I would say that one thing that it has allowed, which I think is a bit of a natural benefit from being virtual, is that it potentially in some areas has slowed the pace of genuine daily life. And the time that you may have spent commuting, the time that you may have spent taking longer to communicate things, may have freed up different time in different people's diaries. And it's potentially easier to go direct to different people and to be able to build a natural network via a small message. So, for example, probably about 6 months ago, I really wanted to understand a certain area of the business. And it became very easy to just drop that person a message and say, I'm Jack, I really want to understand about X, Y, and Z. Can we have a call about it? And I'll be pretty free over the next month for you to come back to me. And I've never met anyone, particularly in my business, but I don't imagine throughout the whole industry as well, that would ever say that they couldn't give you 15 or 20 minutes within a certain period of time. So I know I can see different people nodding their heads now, but if you were to go back to somebody and say, in the next 2 months, I want 20 minutes time, everybody would say yes, and therefore you can create a natural network. And although it may feel quite nerve-wracking to jump on completely new to someone you've never met before, I think that they also have felt that similar thing when they started out in their career as well. So it may be easier than you actually think, and they only want to help. And I think the second thing just to touch on would be that people probably genuinely quite like talking about themselves. So by approaching people and asking about their role, they'll be quite happy to tell you about the different situations that they've been through as well. So often networking virtually, even though it sounds quite daunting, is probably sometimes easier because you've got a very direct link to somebody on a video call, and then you can jump away at the end and keep in contact afterwards.
Brilliant. I think just to summarise what you've shared, Jack, there's no harm in asking, and also, you know, that sharing piece. You know, people are happy to talk about themselves, and you know, can I share with you what we're doing here? If you could share with me an update, and keeping those lines of communication open. So, thank you very much.